There we go. Okay, so, all right, guys, this is a training on how to close somebody on solar. Couple main things and points to remember are we have used this on probably close to 10,000 cells. Um, the goal here is just to walk somebody through solar the right way. If you don't, kind of hold their hand and walk them through the right way, they can get off track and it's easy to get ahead of themselves and end up, confusing themselves into not buying solar. So this is the correct way to walk somebody into solar so that when they see their numbers, it all makes perfect sense for them. So this has been proven time and time again when guys have struggled or guys have not used it. When they go back and they've had trouble, then they go back to the basics, which is this, and and they get right back on track, closing deals. So um, on this presentation, I have, well, if I can learn how to go to the next slide here. I haven't used this a lot, so go to the navigator here so we can go see if it'll let me do it this way. Okay, so all right, now this first page, well, the first page was just a picture of a random house, of course, and just said, just had our symbol on there, or our branding, I guess. This is really the first page. On this version here, you can see my arrow. There's two main points on here that you want to say, and you don't want to say anything else. So if you look here in the quotation here, it just says panels collect the sunlight, inverters convert the energy from the sunlight into usable energy in the home. That's all you want to say. We're just trying to show them, hey, there's the panels, here's the sun, that the panels collect the sunlight, and then inverters convert that energy from the sunlight into usable energy for the home. Now, and then also once you've done that, and you say, hey, look, your home is already connected to the power grid. And I'll point here. We work together with the power company to line all of this up. The only reason on this page, there's no reason to say anything else. The reason it's set up this way, we're just trying to give them a basic familiarity, I guess, with how it's lined up. So essentially, they're already tied up with the power company. They're already hooked into the power company. They already have a meter. So we are going to, we're able to install the panels and the inverters, and that's all hooked right into the meter, just like the meter's already hooked into the power company. So it's just a very quick, simple way to explain how it works, and nothing changes for the homeowner. So if I go down to this other page, what I did here is I put an explanation on why, kind of a quick explanation on a slide below the slide in order to explain why we do it that way. And it also is going to tell you whatever's in the quotation marks is all you should say. So this is exactly how you should say this one on here. All right, we'll say Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, look, here's a quick breakdown of how things are lined up. Obviously, the panels collect the sunlight. Inverters convert the energy from the sunlight into usable energy in the home. And your home is already connected to the power grid with your meter. That's why you're able to get billed already. We work together with the power company to line this up and hook right into the meter. And that's all you say right there. That's it. That's all you want to say. If you're saying more than that, go back and just say this. And pretty simple explanation here. How solar works, number 1 and 2. Simple, simple, simple. This slide is to give a brief look at how solar is lined up. But if you notice, the slide has 2 sentences. That is all you should say. If you say anything else, then you're going into too much detail. Now, also, if customers ask you questions about things that you're going to be covering in the future slides, The way you stay on track is you just tell them, oh, yeah, that's a great question. That's actually coming up here in just a bit. And then go right back to where you were. So the second page in there, net metering. So net metering is the most misunderstood portion of solar, most unknown. So this slide is very important to explain to the customer the right way. So I always tell them, in fact, if I go here, I always say, hey, this is the most unknown or misunderstood part of solar. I say that. So anything in quotes is what I say on these slides. Um, and the reason is because this is why it works. There's two ways here to explain it. Okay, everyone explains it a little differently. You just want to make sure whichever way makes sense to you is how you explain it to the customer. So technically, any production that isn't used in real time will store onto the power grid and gives the customers credits for times when they are using more than they are producing. Okay, that's one way to say it. The way I like to say it, because it just seems to be the easiest for customers, is right here, the second way. I say, let's say during the day you're not home, but your solar is producing power. Well, this power goes onto the grid, giving you credits to use for times like nighttime when you're not producing power. And then I tell them we build out a system to give them 100% of the power they need so that they don't have to pull anything from the power company. And it's right here. We build it out to give you 100% of what you need so you won't have to pay the power company for power anymore. So when you're on this slide, you want to literally have it memorized of the couple things you say. All right? And right here, this slide I really like because it gives you a good example. So if solar power generates 1100 kilowatts, as you can see here, the sun's hitting these panels. Okay. The home uses 1000. Well, the utility company bills you for 0 kilowatt hours and a monthly service charge. Now right here, excess energy is delivered to the grid. So essentially 1100 kilowatt hours produced, only 1000 used. That's going to give them 100 kilowatt hours onto the grid in this particular example. Now, what I like to tell people is, hey, when you're not at home, you're not using the power, it's going to go onto the grid. When you're home and you're using it, but if it's not producing in that time, you're going to be pulling it from the grid. So you need to make sure they understand this. That's the biggest key. And the slide right below this right here is the slide that tells you a couple of different ways to explain it. Make sure they understand it. This annual production graph here on the bottom left is a great way to point it out to them. The gray is the usage. Okay, the gray is the customer's usage. The blue is each month's production of the solar. So this is pretty standard. It doesn't matter when somebody has the higher months. It really doesn't, because on a full year we're going to produce what they need, which is this gray. So some months here you can see they're actually using more power than they're producing, and then these months where they're above that gray, those are all credits they're gaining, and they're going to be able to use it at other times. So that's a great graph, great way to explain it. You have to be so careful not to I guess just don't over explain this. It can be very overwhelming or very easily misunderstood. If you lose a customer on this part, if they don't understand this, then it's going to probably just about ruin any chances of getting this deal closed right now. So net metering. So to kind of start over fresh, and we're going to go back to the Mr. Smith. All right, Mr. Smith, net metering. This is the most unknown part of solar, or misunderstood. Now, so I really want you to understand this. Make sure you let me know if you have any questions. What happens is, during the day, let's say, you're gone to work and the sun's out, it's producing power. That power has to go somewhere, and it's actually going to store onto the power grid. Like we talked earlier, you're already connected into the power grid. So any production that you're not using right then or overproduction is going to go onto the power grid. Okay, essentially making your meter go backwards. Now, then at nighttime, you come home and you're using your power, but you're not producing. You're going to be using those credits that you've gained at other times. So as you can see here on our example, Mr. Smith, with net metering, essentially the sun is hitting the panels, producing power. If you generate 1,100 kilowatt hours, for example, and your home only uses 1,000, well, then that difference there is going to be on its excess energy is delivered to the grid. And so when production is greater than home usage, excess is applied to the future months. So basically, Mr. Smith, we're going to be able to, we build it out so that on the full year, you're going to have what you need for your power and not have to worry about pulling power from the power company. So here's a great production graph here. It just shows you the production here on the usage, which is in the gray. That's the customer's power usage. The blue is the production from the solar. So as you can see here, some months there's more production. These months that are building credits are going to offset the months where a customer's not producing as much as they're using. So does that make sense, Mr. Smith? Perfect. Okay. So that's what I want to go about that. So the biggest thing I said is you've got to understand net metering yourself as a rep, as a solar representative. And pretty much every power company, if you'll ever hear us say, hey, the net metering's not very good there, that just means it's a pain in the butt. It's not really worth doing solar in yet. But most of the bigger companies are required to allow net metering. So that is, it's important to know. So, and it's important to explain that to the customer the right way. So, now disadvantages of the utility company. This page, as you can see, so some of these I was able to put a quote kind of right on the actual slide for training purposes, but I followed up with a slide that has a little bit more of an explanation. This one's pretty simple. This is the nice way to talk trash on some, kind of, I guess, talk badly about power companies. So one thing we all know, and these words in the bold, writing here. So this is kind of how I'm able to keep on track when I'm with the customer. If you're new at doing this, just read it for exactly what it says. Just say utility rates are constantly rising. The average yearly increase is 4 to 5%. They are investor owned and charge you more to increase their company profits. So we all know that every year power prices go up. That's just how it goes. It's how it's always been. It's something that, it's just how it is. Now, the other thing, most people they have to ignore these facts that we're going to point out to them because they don't have a choice. That's why they have to, they have to get power through the power company where they live. They don't have a choice, and this is why, but now they do with solar, and so that's why we show them this. Renting your power. So just to explain this, and then I'll pitch it like I would to a customer. We really are currently renting power from them. So if you think about it, people are paying them, a lot of people pay power from the day they start, own a home till the day they die. And they don't ever get any of that money back. So, they're essentially paying that to keep their lights on. So there's no sort of return on your investment. So just like when somebody's buying a home, I used to do mortgages, so I use this example. The customer will say, hey, you bought a home so that you could stop throwing your money away to the rent, when you're renting. Now, when you make a payment on your home, you're actually you're making a payment, but it's actually going towards your home, and towards a asset that you own. So right now, everybody is currently renting their power. Utility is the landlord, and unless you do something about it, you're committed to pay them, till you die. I say forever, just in case you have some old people. But really, you are renting. So the concept here is instead of now when you're making a payment, when you go solar, you actually making a payment towards your own power system that is an asset, just like your home. So it's ownership versus renting. If that doesn't click with people, then it'll click. So you committed to pay utility forever. You never get away from the monthly debt of power without owning your own power. So I basically will follow kind of right along with these sales, look at rising prices, renting your power, and explain that. I'll explain this little quotation here. Then I'll put in here. Now, not all utilities, but a lot of them. And so I would just read this either way. I'd say, hey, they charge you a higher rate if you use more power. Instead, discounting their prices for you by buying more power, they raise their rate if you use more. Usually, I like to point this out to people. Say, hey, usually we get discounts by buying more, like Costco. Power gets away with charging more when using more. So, I mean that's the whole. It's kind of crazy that as you use more, then the power companies charge you more, and they strategically set the blocks and things to where they can charge more based off of when most homeowners use more power. So, and the reason they get away with this, and that we all are dealing with this, is because they are a monopoly. We have no choice but to get power from them at the prices they choose. They could double your rates whenever. They really could. So, you want to try to make sure customers are involved with you on this. You want to make sure they're hearing your or that they're kind of engaged with you. Make sure and make sure they're understanding this. This should be starting to turn these light bulbs on in their head and get them super on board with what solar means. And then when you get to the numbers, it's a lot easier. So I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna pitch this just like I pitch to a customer. Now, you do want to just have a conversation with them. So that's why I like to look at it and say, you know what, rates are always rising. So I just look at the bold points. I say, hey, look, rates are always rising, as you know, and people sometimes will get get pretty like passionate about this part. They're like, oh yeah, and they'll kind of agree with you and start kind of selling themselves on it. So all right, Mr. Smith, as you probably know, utility rates are always going up. Average yearly increase is 4 to 5%. Obviously investors own it; they've got to make money, and so they're always going to be raising prices. So I'm sure you've seen that before on your power bill. Right now, you're renting your power. Um, utilities a landlord, and we're all paying them, and it keeps our lights on, but there's nothing we get back out of it. Um, you know, just like buying a home, instead of rent, everybody buys a home so they don't have to, spend $1,000 or whatever it is to rent, and they're not getting anything back. They're not getting anywhere. Um, Now, when they buy a home, they're able to put that every month they make a payment. It's actually paying. It's going towards the ownership of that home. So they're actually investing into their home. Right now, you are currently renting power, and so the same concept is with solar. You can actually now make a payment each month, and instead of it going to the power company, it's actually going towards your your solar system, so that you are gaining that asset. Just like buying your home, now you can buy your own power system and get some. And now you're investing into your home. You're committed to pay utility company forever, unless you can get away. You can't get away from the monthly debt of power without owning your own power. Now, also, I don't know if you noticed, but we're all used to getting a discount deal at Costco, right, for buying more. That's what So what's crazy is these power companies are able to get away with charging more by the more you use. So we're all so used to the bulk discount concept, and that's not the case with power. They actually can charge you more, and the reason they get away with all these things is because it's a monopoly. It's kind of been the only way to get power for a long time, and so now with solar, you're able to get away from those sort of things. So. Does that make sense, Mr. Smith? Okay, cool. So that's how I pitched that. That one's pretty simple. Um, and I just put on here for kind of like the slide, kind of, but the slide is to point out the obvious things power customers ignore because they don't have a choice. Now they do. It's funny because whenever I point that slide out, I've had plenty of people, I'll say, hey, this is all very obvious stuff, but we haven't been able to do anything about it. And they'll kind of tell me how they don't like to look at their power bill because they don't know what it's going to be. So you're committed to pay the utility forever. I really like that line, and I really like pointing out the discount or the buying in bulk line. You notice in there I do talk about ownership for, and maybe I'll add that to this. Actually, line here is the ownership concept. You know, compare owning your own power. Compare that to the same as owning your own, or it's like renting and then buying a home. So now people are actually gaining an asset. So I will put that on there actually after this. All right, so your electric bill. This is a pretty uh, self-explanatory page. I did do an explanation here in the quotations. Anything in quotations is what I'm is are things that I actually say, and I would avoid saying much more than those, except on some of the pages you can obviously read what they say. Um, but on your electric bill here, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is what we did. So if I have somebody that has, I just take the closest current electric bill average, like the close. So let's say it's 170, and we have a 175. So hey, Mr. Smith. So as we were going through this, and I looked at everything, looks like your average is about $170 a month. Does that sound right? Okay, cool. So right there, I established an average with the customer. Um, Now, all right, well, let's take the 175 then. So what we did is we said, okay, the amount of power that you're using today that is costing you an average of this one, roughly 175 a month. That same amount of power usage 20 years ago, we went back 20 years, and that 20 years ago was only $63 for that same amount of power. So this page, guys, is to cause pain, is what it's doing, and it has a 5-year breakdown. So 90, every 5 years, kind of to see what the power's done to where it's at today, and then it shows on the initial 20 years, these first 20 years, that's $33,500 paid to the power company, based off of a current average bill today of 175. And then right here, guys, the best way to say this is if history repeats itself. Make sure you say it like that so the customer doesn't, that's what this next lines are, or these next numbers are, if history repeats itself. And these are real numbers based off of, the kind of the average across the board. You're going to have a few areas, California, some of the East Coast stuff that powers way, way higher than what this is. But this is a pretty safe bet and conservative, so that you don't have people thinking, yeah, right, and not believing this. So if we take 175, if history repeats itself, this gives you 5-year increments of what the payment will be for that same amount of power. That's what's crazy. The same amount of power you use now in 20 years will cost you $383 a month, and you'll have spent $80,734 additional to the power company. And guess what? You'll still be right where you are. You will still be paying power. You haven't, that 80,000 has basically kept your lights on, but it hasn't. You have nothing in return for that. There's no return on your investment. It's not an investment. It's just giving money to keep power on. So and maybe I'll back up and kind of explain this how I do the customer, but it's just like I said it almost. To say, all right, Mr. Smith. So we established about 170 is your average power bill, right? Okay, cool. Well, let's take 175 here. So if you have a current bill today of 175, and then what we did is we went back 20 years to see how much that same amount of power you're using right now cost you 20 years ago. And as you can see, it's only $63. This is a 5-year increment of what the power prices have done over time. Nothing crazy, but it does add up, and that means so far somebody's spent with an average power bill like you, it would be about $33,000 to the power company already spent. And if history repeats itself, Mr. Smith, this is what it looks like every 5 years, up to 20 years more, and what you've spent at that time. So if you look here at 20 years, you'll be a $383 power bill average for the same power, same exact usage. It's costing you only $175 today. And that will mean over the next 20 years, you'll have given almost $81,000 to the power company. So, that's, I know it's painful. That's just how it is, and that's what we've all been used to. And you'll still be going. You'll still be paying, right? That's just the next 20 years. And so, let's move on to the next page. So, All right, guys. So on that, everybody kind of, I just put on here, this is the pain page. It's safe to use chart in just about any utility. Take your customer's average power bill and point it out on the chart. We went back 20 years to the cost of the same usage they are using today. Make sure you point this out to the customers. Yeah, anyways, make sure you, um, point out that they've already paid and what they're going to pay over the next 20 years. So here's kind of the quote here, what I said. If you guys need a refresher. Now remember right here, history repeats itself. I put that in all caps because I think that's the best way to say it when you're talking about the next 20 years for somebody. So that is the pain page. So the problem is that they're spending a lot of money and they're throwing a lot of money away, and that's where we come in. We're the fix, right? The solar is the fix. That's why this is in there. Now, when you don't explain this kind of stuff to the customer like I am to you guys right now, but you're only going to say what I said. But so now after going over, so it's kind of review. So we just explained to him how the solar works, just real basic, so he kind of knows that it's no big deal. Okay, we explained net metering next. The net metering is really, guys, is why the financials work, because the power company acts as they store your grid, or they store your power on the grid so that you can use that sun power, throughout the year, instead of the power company. Now, the sun will give us power. I don't know why anyone would not be getting solar, right? I mean, why pay for power when the sun's free? So, I mean, so anyways, you've explained to them this, you've explained to them net metering, you've now made the obvious kind of more, you pointed out the obvious here on the disadvantages of the utility company. You also explained to them about owning your system now instead of owning your power instead of renting your power. You've then caused some pain and explained to them how much money they've already basically put, how much money they've already spent and how much they're going to spend down the road. And these are very conservative, guys. We could have easily justified a lot bigger of a number here, but we didn't want to make it look kind of ridiculous to the customer, even though it is. So now right here, why go solar? This page is just to kind of sum up all those. We just clicked, all these light bulbs, or just turn these lights on for these customers, and now they're on the same page as us. They're realizing all the same things that we realize, that we know about solar, or that we know about. Right now they're literally paying power, they're renting power, all those things. This kind of just sums up the why go solar right before we head into their proposal. So this page, the best thing to do is literally read what it says. So why go solar? This is, and I just tell people, this is why this is why people go solar. And then right here, I just put kind of a notes, read bullet points out loud with the customer, and then point, to the graph accordingly. So it replaces your electric bill from the utility company, right? So it replaces your always increasing, bill from the utility company right here in the red. Locked in monthly utility payments. So right here, fixed solar payment. It doesn't ever change. It's just going to stay the same until you pay it off. So stop paying for electricity entirely. So you're going to have fixed payments, and then you're going to be, all of a sudden it's going to get paid off, and then you're just saving more and more money, okay? So literally on this one, as simple as this one is, that it just kind of points out how simple you need to be on all these, because this is just such a visual. People are lazy. They don't want to read. And a lot of people are, most everybody's going to learn off of visual a lot better than, details. That's why you want to keep it so simple. It's like, oh, why go solar? Well, it's easy. Right now you're paying whatever this is right here, and it's always going to go up no matter what, and it's never going to stop. With solar now, you can actually put a stop to that, and just like it says here, stop paying for electricity entirely. You can lock in a monthly payment. Now, the monthly payment doesn't always come in lower. A lot of times it does with the programs we have now, but it does not always come in lower than the power average payment. But even if it doesn't, and we've sold plenty of them that don't come in lower on the monthly average year one, but over time is what this is trying to show is, look, it doesn't matter, because this is going to stay the same no matter what it is until you pay it off. So it's fixed solar payments, and basically as time goes on, hopefully they're saving money out the gate. But as time goes on, no matter what, they're saving more and more and more and more. And then all of a sudden, when their solar's paid off, they stop paying for electricity entirely. Then the savings gets out of hand. So I mean, it's kind of this points out the no brainer of it, and that's kind of what we're trying to get is we want to make this simple and a no brainer for people. And it is if they're explained correctly, and if you explain it nice and simple. You got to pretend you're explaining this to like a 12-year-old sibling of yours, and if you do it that way, then the customer will, they're going to understand and they won't be lost. So right here, final slide is very obvious and points out a summary of why go solar. It's simple. Lock in fixed payments on your power. Utilities increasing costs don't affect the solar customer. Save more and more money as time goes on. When you make the payment, it's to your own power system. You're able to pay off your system and not pay for electricity ever again. This, in quotations, is what you want to make sure you get across to the customer. The point of Solar 101 here is to turn on the light bulbs in homeowners' head, and then when you show them their solar build out, they look at it the right way. It's helped us sell thousands of systems by walking a customer down the right path of why solar works. Now you can show them their solar system and then their numbers, and if you stuck to Solar 101, customer will be more likely to buy. So now they get it. They're like, wow, it clicks just like you guys, just like a new rep when they first understand what solar actually does. They're able to it clicks. That's what's so exciting about it is it clicks for you and it does the same for the customer. So you're just trying to do the same for the customer. And just remember when you first are learning solar how much there is that goes into it, how much detail and questions, and it can be an overwhelming thing for anybody. Solar 101 points out what's needed to be known. We're not trying to keep anything from the customer, but we're just trying to not create unneeded questions and unneeded concerns. If a customer is led through this way, and you make sure that if they try to take you off track on this, that you tell them, that you make sure that you say, oh yeah, no, that's something we're going to go over here in just a bit. Then and take them through in the right order. You're going to get more. You're going to close a lot more of these than you don't, or you're going to close more of these than you don't close. That's for sure. So, and if you're having troubles closing deals, then you just come to this. It's the basics. It's very simple and memorize. You want to memorize exactly what to say on each, when you go to the home, because on here we've got it set up so you can see, you can read it right off the page here, but you just need to memorize this. And what's cool is it's very simple. So what I'm going to do, and then finish this up, is I'm going to go over this. So just like I'm with the customer. So I'll pretend I'm with the customer the whole time, and that's it. So, all right, we'll go Mr. Smith again. All right, Mr. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This Solar 101, I'm just going to show you some of the basics. Just stop me if you have any questions, as we go. But this will kind of just give you the basics. Make sure that everything, you need to know about solar that you know. So first page here, how does solar work? Well, so what happens is obviously the panels are going to collect the sun, any of the sunlight, and there's inverters that convert the energy from the sunlight into the usable energy in your home. So now you guys already have a meter here, the home. It's already connected into the power, it's already connected into the power grid, so your home has power. When we set up the solar, we just hook it. We work together with the power company, line it all up, and hook right into your meter that already exists. So nothing changes for you guys. You use your power. You do things the same. All right, net metering. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, please ask me questions if you have any on this page, because this is the most unknown or misunderstood part of solar. This is why it makes sense for a lot of people. So, basically during the day, if you guys are gone, to work, let's say, and the sun's out, it's producing power. Well, that power is going to what happens actually gets stored onto the grid and builds you energy credits. Essentially, imagine your meter going backwards when you're not using the power that is getting produced, and so it actually will build the excess will build you credits for things like nighttime. You come home at night, there's no sun's not out, you're not producing power. Well, you might be using power. You're pulling from those credits that you've built. So we build it out so that on a full year you have the amount of power you need, so you don't have to pull power from the power grid. So as you can see here, just a quick example. Solar panels generate 1,100 kilowatt hours. Let's say home uses 1,000. Well, that additional amount is excess energy delivered to the grid. So excess is applied to the future months. So this annual production graph really kind of sums it up. The gray here is the utility usage, or how much power somebody's using. The blue is a graph for the solar production. Now, so as you can see here, there's months where there's more production than there is usage, and those months you're building credits, and it's going to cover months like in this specific example, November, December, January, February, that you're using more power than you're producing. So yeah, we build it out though so that you have what you need and can stop having to pay the power company. So, next page here. So disadvantages of the power company, utility company. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, these are all obvious things we all kind of just have to ignore. So I'm just going to kind of repoint them out. But as you know, rates are always going up. They're always rising. Investors own the power companies and they've got to make money, and that's just how it goes. Inflation, all that they're always going to be going up. Like right now, you guys probably have seen that before, I'm sure. The rising prices always. And is that right? Okay, yep. See, I figured you guys just had an increase. Okay, I hear that a lot. So, well, then the next thing too is really right now we're all renting our power. We're all kind of committed to pay the power company until we die, really, forever. And it'll keep our lights on, but we're not going to get anything back out of it. So with if you have your own power system, so you never get away from the monthly debt of power, obviously, without having your own power. So just like buying a home, to stop renting, just like home ownership, that's what home ownership is. Why everyone tries to own a home, so that they can make a payment now to their own, home, and build their own assets. Now with solar, that's what, now when you're making a payment, you're actually paying it towards your own power system. And it's also an asset for you. So now every time you cut a check, it's to yourself instead of the power company. Now, does that make sense? Okay, perfect. So, and crazy thing is they charge you a higher rate if you use more power. So the more you use, the more they charge you, which instead of, what we're used to, like a Costco, where everything's kind of these days, it's a bulk buy. If you buy in bulk, well, you get a discount. We all know that. So power gets away with it because they can, because that's the only choice that most of us have. And so that's kind of this last point here is they're a monopoly. I mean, you move into a home, you buy a home, you find out what utility services it, and then you're that's your choice. You don't have choices. So, these are some obvious things, but obviously things we all kind of ignore, and because we don't have much to, haven't in the past, we haven't had a whole lot we could do about it. So that takes us to the next one here. So, all right, we talked about your average power bill a little earlier. After doing that and looking at things, you guys were thinking it was about 170, right? Okay, perfect. That's what I came up with too, is $170 average. So just for to make it easy, we're going to say 175 here on this graph. So what we did is we took if somebody's current electric bill right now is 175, then we said, okay, for that amount of usage 20 years ago, we went back and we found out how much that same amount of usage would have cost you 20 years ago. Well, as you can see here, it's $63. So this is a 5-year increments of the increases over the last 20 years to get to where it's at today, what the costs are right now for your 175 average. And that means, and that also shows that over the 20 years, you would have paid $33,540 to the power company just in the last 20 years, just to keep your lights on. Now, if history repeats itself, this is a 5-year increments as well. leading up to the 20 years in the future, if history repeats itself, if you're using the same amount of power you're using right now, would then $383 is how much that same usage would cost, and that would have been another $81,000 almost that you've paid to the power company, and you still would be going. You're still going to have to pay every month after that as well. So that's just to kind of give you a 20-year, if history repeats itself, look at what you spend to the power company. So for the same usage. So that takes me to kind of sum this up real quick, and then we'll get into look at your build and your numbers for your proposal. So why go solar? This is why people go solar, because they can replace, replace your electric bill from the utility company, okay? The bill that we know is always going to go up, right? Now, we can do locked in monthly utility payment. So now you don't have to worry about the increases. It's going to be a locked in monthly utility payment. And really, you're just paying for your system because the sun's free. And that payment will never change. Our goal is to get it down, as low as or below what you guys are paying now each month. But either way, that payment's fixed, and as time goes on, you're saving more and more money, as you can see here, and then you can actually stop paying for electricity entirely. So once your system's paid off, you don't have to worry about paying for any sort of power. So, so yeah, that's it. We'll get to your proposal now and see how many panels you guys need to get your production, and then go from there. So.